Today, we're going to talk about something really disturbing. It's a pattern, a predictable one, where a rivalry doesn't just stay a rivalry, it turns deadly. We're looking at what is essentially the roadmap to murder. You know, we tend to think of murder as this sudden, shocking event that comes out of nowhere. But what if that's not true? What if most of the time it's not a surprise at all?
The reality is, it's often the last stop on a tragic and frankly predictable path. A path that is just littered with red flags and warning signs that, for whatever reason, get ignored.
To really get what this path looks like, we need to start with a story, a human story. We need to talk about Romeca Meeks. Okay, so the basic facts are just chilling. Romeca Meeks, who was a nurse and a mom, was shot and killed. The shooter was Quadajajan Johnson, the new girlfriend of Romeca's ex. But here's what's so unbelievable. It happened right after she dropped her child off at school, on what should be sacred ground. This horrible act didn't just happen randomly. It followed a really clear, predictable pattern of escalation. So let's unpack the roadmap that led to this tragedy. How did it get to this point? It turns out, this path to violence usually follows 4 pretty distinct steps. It kicks off with public dehumanization, making the target seem less than human. Then it moves to obsessive stalking, which is all about invading the victim's life. After that, you get direct threats. And then the final, terrible step, lethal violence. So what does that first step, dehumanization, actually look like? Well, in this case, it wasn't just some insults. Quadajajan Johnson allegedly made online videos where she mocked Romeca for being a nurse and even used deep, personal trauma from Romeca's past against her. It's a classic tactic, right? You make your target seem inhuman, and that makes it psychologically easier to commit violence. And after the dehumanization and the stalking, you get to step 3, the direct threats. Threat assessment experts have a name for this. They call it leakage. It's when someone literally broadcasts what they're planning to do. Johnson allegedly posted this exact quote on social media. I mean, come on, that is not a subtle clue, it's a declaration. It's a massive, screaming red flag that the system somehow missed. And that, right there, brings us to the most infuriating part of this story, the point where the system had a clear, undeniable chance to step in, and it just didn't. Let's just walk through this timeline of failure. First, Johnson, the aggressor, actually weaponizes the legal system. She files a stalking order against Romeca, trying to paint herself as the victim. So Romeca, who is now genuinely terrified for her life, tries to get her own order of protection. And then, in a move that's just impossible to understand, a judge allegedly denies her request. And this quote, supposedly from that judge, just says it all. This one sentence basically treats this life-or-death situation like it's some kind of petty playground fight. It completely misses who the aggressor is and who the victim is. It didn't just fail to protect Romeca, it validated her attacker and left her completely defenseless. What happened to Romeca has a name. It's called third-party relationship violence. And here's the problem. Because the attacker isn't technically an intimate partner, victims like her fall into this legal gray area. They can't access the same protections, like a domestic violence restraining order, that others can. It's a loophole in the law, and it's leaving people dangerously exposed. And believe me, this was not just a one-off tragedy. This pattern repeats itself. Let's look at the story of Olivia Walker, a woman who survived a terrifyingly similar situation. So Olivia Walker was brutally assaulted and left for dead. And just like Romeca's case, it all stemmed from a conflict with another woman over a man they were both dating. For years, she was harassed and stalked right outside her own house. She said she felt like a prisoner in her own home. I mean, look at this. The parallels are just staggering. Both women were obsessively stalked. In both cases, the system just dropped the ball. Romeca's order was denied. In Olivia's case, the police apparently did nothing, even though she had video and a license plate number. And the result, the perpetrators felt like they could get away with anything. They were emboldened, and they faced no real consequences, at least not at first. Now, the sources we're looking at also bring up another really sensitive but critical question here. Did bias play a part in how these cases were handled? Specifically, the issue of colorism. The source material points out a really troubling parallel. Both victims, Romeca Meeks and Olivia Walker, were described as brown-skinned Black women. On the other hand, both of their alleged attackers were described as being very fair-skinned Black women. And this feeling of unequal justice is pretty much summed up by this quote.
A friend of the man involved in Romeca's case said people believed the shooter wasn't immediately arrested because she was perceived as being white. This highlights a potential bias where lighter skin might lead to less severe treatment by the justice system.
So, what do we take away from all of this? It's really about recognizing these signs. The public smear campaigns online, the obsessive stalking, both online and in person, the direct threats, weaponizing the courts. And look, this is the most important one. When a victim tells you they are scared, you have to believe them. They are the expert on their own fear.
Which leaves us with this one final haunting question. In Romeca's case, and in so many others, the roadmap to murder was laid out for everyone to see. All the warning signs were there, so why on earth couldn't the system see them?